So let's get to the point here. While I was in Miami, there's a writer who wrote a piece for humanevents.com. And Human Events is a publication, conservative publication that has been around for a very long time, for decades. It's very well known. And I read their stuff from time to time, and it's usually pretty interesting content. I don't know anybody over there, but it seems pretty solid. But there's a guy named R.C. Maxwell, who I guess took issue with the conscious conservative movement, and he had a lot to say about it. Now, so he wrote an article. I'm going to pull it up here. And the article is really about critical race theory, and it's an article arguing against that, which that's fine. I actually plan to dive deeper on critical race theory because a lot of us disagree with it, myself included. But I think it's important that we know what we're arguing against, rather than just going from whatever misperception we might be fed by the media. I think it's important. So I'm going to bring it up here. Really quick, when I do this, I want you to let me know if you can still hear me. Oh, wrong thing. Oh, no, that was correct. All right. Now, can you still hear me when this is up? Let me know if you can't. But as you can see here, this is the article. America's Critical Race Delusion Must Be Stopped, again, by R.C. Maxwell. So I'm not going to go through the entire piece because there was only one part that I really wanted to hone in on. It's talking about how critical race theory is becoming more prevalent, and the far left is pushing it a lot more in our culture, which they are. It's true. I mean, especially at the university level. It's a theory that really started out in the legal industry, but then it's now moved more into education and to other fields as well. Now, you might know critical race theory from when President Trump banned it or stopped working and had the federal government stop working with businesses that taught critical race theory as part of their diversity training. And that was a contentious issue, right? It was pretty controversial. So I'm scrolling down here. Let's see. This is where he gets into, again, the infamous panel that they can't stop talking about. And if you want to see my thoughts on the panel, I mean, you can look on my YouTube channel. I did a live stream on Charrise's CPAC panel with Black conservatives. And that was really a pivotal moment because you didn't have the usual names on that panel that would normally speak at CPAC, which I think is the real reason why a lot of Black conservative ink types are angry at it. So he says here, CPAC's only, let me put this up here. CPAC's only panel dedicated to race, titled Doubt, Dysfunction, and the Price of Missed Opportunities, failed to mention critical race theory at all. In fact, the program criticized conservative messaging at large for sticking to talking points, while tacitly pleading conservatives to embrace the growing pains that come with embracing a new dialogue on race. So, he is taking issue with the fact that a lot of the people on that stage criticize the conservatives' messaging to the Black community. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that anybody is into critical race theory. They found it more important to talk about how the GOP and the conservative movement is failing to win over Black voters. That is what we need to be talking about right now. We can't talk about critical race theory when the Republican Party doesn't even know how to message to Black people. So the messaging that we've been using for 60 years deserves to be criticized because it's been the same messaging, again, for 6 decades at least, and it has failed for that long. And trying a new approach is long overdue. So yeah, that right there is actually a more pressing issue than critical race theory. We can't even get to the point to where we can argue about critical race theory when we've got a conservative messaging strategy that focuses not on Black people, but on messaging to white conservatives about Black people and spreading false stereotypes and relying on false or inaccurate or incomplete talking points. That's an issue. When we can get to the point to where we're adopting a new strategy, that's when we can really fight this critical race theory thing. But the Black community is not going to listen to us as long as this ridiculous messaging is still part of the conservative movement. So let me continue. He mentions, the Carlton Banks thing. And then this is where we get into some, I'll just say they're misleading claims. Some of my, if you're watching this and you're one of my Red State readers, some of you have gotten on me when I called out Candace Owens for lying about the Black community, which I still stand by that. That is still my opinion. But some of y'all thought I was too harsh with that. So in this one, I'll be a smidgen less harsh, even though it's kind of still my opinion on this case. But there's some misleading claims. So this is where he gets into it. He says, let's see, let me get myself off of here. One talk show radio host, Sonnie Johnson, once notably disagreed with, well, actually, let me back up. Let me do this. The panelists, moderated by Black Guns Matter founder Maj Toure, regurgitated leftist depictions of how conservatives view race and even associated traditional Black conservative ideology with the character Carlton Banks from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That's actually misleading. There's nothing left-wing about what we were saying. These are just observations. I'm saying we, like I was up on that stage, but you hear me talk about this stuff all the time. Yeah, there were no left-wing arguments on that panel whatsoever. And all you have to do is watch the video. Don't take my word for it. Just watch the video. It's easy to find. And as a matter of fact, I'll try to remember to put it in the show notes here so that you can see that that was dishonest. And then he goes to Sonnie Johnson, who once notably disagreed with former President Trump's assessment that his administration had made things easier on the Black community. How dare you disagree with Trump on anything? These people are obsessed with Trump. I don't get it. But here's the thing. Oh, I'm going to the wrong thing. Here's the thing. Sonnie Johnson didn't necessarily disagree with President Trump making things better. She never said that he didn't do anything to make things better for Black people. She didn't say that Black people were basically doing the exact same as they were before Trump. She just disagreed with the notion that everything is fine now. And she has said this even after after her meeting with Trump. She said that, you know, in a lot of areas, in most areas where Black folks are doing worse, they're still not doing all that well. That's all she said. So that was a misleading claim. Next, he hit Charrise Lane. Now, Charrise Lane, she is a young woman who also happens to be a Black conservative, and she came up through Turning Point USA, and then sometime last year, or maybe even before that, she ended up leaving the organization, largely because of their messaging about the Black community. Let me go down to where he talks about her. So he says, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to skip here. He was talking about Mitt Romney, which, I mean, if he's criticizing Mitt Romney, I'm okay with that. Where did she go? Let me look for her. There it is. Okay. Yeah, that's right. He spelled her name wrong. Okay. So he spelled Charise's name wrong, and he spelled Felicia's name wrong. You might, if you want to like write a hit piece, at least get the person's name right. Come on now. Let's step up our game a little bit. But this is where he gets into Felecia Killings, who's in the room with us, and Charrise Lane. But conscious Black conservatives like Killings and Charrise Lane, a Twitter personality, who has criticized the resoluteness in which Candace Owens speaks of critical race theory, agree that the calls for reparations are legitimate, and frequently argue that conservatives ought to adopt these beliefs or forfeit hopes of black voter engagement. This guy needs a proofreader. I'm just going to say, I make mistakes when I write too, but I'm just saying, I mean, they could have edited that a little bit better. But so misleading claim 2, Charrise Lane criticized Candace Owens for attacking critical race theory. But look at how he writes this sentence. Who has criticized the resoluteness in which Candace Owens speaks of critical race theory. And then he links to a video where she's talking about the approach that I was just talking about how our approach to the Black community is ridiculous, and Candace Owens is a part of that, which she is. She said Charrise Lane didn't say anything about critical race theory. She didn't criticize Candace Owens for criticizing critical race theory. She was just saying what we all say, like the approach that we use to the Black community is stupid, ineffective, and misleading, and we should use a new one. Now, what was the next one? Now we're going to get to the meat of it. Felecia Killings supports critical race theory because she is a rabid Marxist who wants us all on the Democratic plantation and, you know, all the rest of the stuff that they usually say. So he picked out a tweet from her, and I'm going to pull that tweet up right now. And this, I want you to pay attention to this because this is very reminiscent of how the left-wing media tries to manipulate us and tries to deceive us into believing something that isn't true. Here it is. Okay. This is the tweet that he used. And let me get rid of this. Trump banning diversity training was to appeal to the alt-right group in the Republican Party, and that will be the end of him. Who complains about being called racist all the time and then immediately bans diversity training at a time when citizens are asking for peace? Now, if it were that tweet alone, I might understand the misunderstanding. I might give him the benefit of the doubt. But here's the thing. He never asked for any kind of clarification. He never even reached out to her to see why she posted that tweet. He just used that to assume that, oh, well, then she's all about critical race theory, blah, 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 blah. But if he had done a little bit more digging, like, say, a 5-minute search on Twitter, he could have figured out what Felecia Killings thinks of critical race theory and why she said what she said. But since he didn't do that, I'm going to do it for you. So, number one, I told you Marxism, communism was in the Republican Party. Y'all want to ban knowledge instead of competing. If any company discusses this knowledge, Big Daddy Trump has a punishment waiting for it. And conservatives want Americans to be indoctrinated with 1776 patriot history. Let's keep going. Where's that same energy when it comes time to battle the left? Have you prevented a viable alternative to CRT? Have you presented new ideas that do not require a colorblind antidote? No, you want banning instead. Let's keep going. I'm not saying conservatives must learn CRT. I am asking, where is the competing ideology? Where is the conservative race theory that addresses racism while presenting solutions based on those values? We didn't show up, so the left filled the void in our diversity training. Next, if your arguments are not grounded in principles, authentic history, qualitative and quantitative data, they will fall flat. Simply saying CRT is mean to me because I'm white is not an argument. And when you couldn't fight or win, you ran to Big Daddy to suppress. Last, but certainly not least, y'all keep telling me there's a difference between diversity training and CRT, but you haven't pointed me to one single conservative curricula that addresses the race issue via conservative principles. So you keep losing the fight. Now then, those tweets provide a lot more context than just that one tweet, doesn't it? Like I said, it took me less than 5 minutes to find all of those tweets just by running a simple search in Twitter, which is the same thing that this RC guy could have done. As a matter of fact, he probably did because he had to have looked for that tweet to even find the first one. So he probably saw those other ones. Again, I can't say this for sure. I wasn't sitting next to him. But if he's a commentator, if he's any kind of journalist, those tweets would have popped up when he ran his search. So when you look at those other tweets, when you put all those tweets in context, what is Felicia's argument? It's obvious. Celebrating the fact that President Trump banned critical race theory doesn't make much sense because, as you can already see, now that a new president is in office, he's going to put all that back anyway. It's just this equivalent to ruling by executive order. Yeah, that sounds great when it's your guy, but when the next guy comes in, all they have to do is just do their own executive orders and erase your legacy, and that's what Biden has been doing. Moreover, instead of competing on the battlefield of ideas, we went to Trump to say, oh, well, just ban it. And we just celebrate as if that was a victory there, like him banning it was some type of victory. That's not victory because the left still owns the cultural conversation on race. So they can still promote this theory and they have no real competition because conservatives are not putting forth an effective argument. Now, I'm not saying that no conservatives are. There are plenty of conservatives who are taking principled stances against it and trying to infuse that into the culture. But until we get more influence in the culture, we're not really going to make a difference here. Just having the president do a little symbolic banning, that's not going to do anything. That was her point. We should be competing on the battlefield of ideas against critical race theory. I mean, hell, the one tweet said, "I am not saying that conservatives should learn critical race theory." It is 100% obvious that Felecia Killings does not support critical race theory. And like I said earlier, a lot of conservatives don't even know what they're arguing against. I've started doing some research on this, and it's pretty bad, but I think it might be even worse than what we're thinking it is. And here we are just using arguments like we don't like CRT because it says bad things about white people. No, it goes deeper than that. And guess what? Just like the theory of intersectionality and pretty much every other far left theory, they take an issue that has a kernel of truth to it. It has like a nugget of truth. There's just a little bit of truth there. And then they blow it up and they manufacture an entire narrative that is designed to push their agenda. And just with the beginnings of my research, I can see that that's what they're doing here. So nobody on that panel is subscribing to critical race theory, at least as far as I know. As far as Charrise Lane talking about reparations, the debate over reparations predates critical race theory. It's been going on since right after slavery was a thing, right after slavery was abolished. So yeah, just because you disagree on that issue doesn't mean that Charrise Lane is all about that critical race theory life. So the whole thing was quite deceptive. And again, you know, I'm not going to go as far as I did with Candace Owens, but it's very difficult for me to believe that R.C. Maxwell was approaching this in good faith. Now, he could have just been mistaken, but if he were, he would have admitted the mistake. He's not going to, because like others in Black Conservative Inc., their real issue is the fact that there are other Black conservative voices out there. I mean, I saw a tweet from him, I think it was like a year or two ago, where he was saying, you know, what's wrong with using the plantation metaphor? What's wrong with saying that Black Democrats are slaves on a mental plantation? So obviously he is more in line with that way of thinking, which is fine. That is his prerogative. But to write a piece that is totally misleading because you don't like what people are saying, or you don't like the fact that they got a platform at CPAC, or you don't like that they're getting more prominence, that ain't it, Chief. I mean, that ain't going to get you where you want to go. And what I was talking about, how the left does these things. I mean, what he did with Felicia's tweets is the exact same thing that CNN did with Trump when they concocted the Fine People hoax. You guys are familiar with that, right? The notion that President Trump praised Nazis and white nationalists after Charlottesville, when in reality, if you watch the entire clip, he clearly says that his comments were not meant for neo-Nazis or white nationalists. What they did is they took that video and they cut that part out, and now all you have is, oh, there were fine people on both sides. That's what this guy did. He took one tweet and used that to indicate that Felecia is into critical race theory, when all he had to do was look at the other tweets that put it more in context. He could have still disagreed with her argument. That's fine. But instead, it was the lie by omission. Like I said, the activist media doesn't normally lie by commission. They don't normally just make stuff up out of whole cloth. They usually lie about only presenting certain facts that promote their narrative and leaving the others out, or downplaying them, or not even addressing them at all. And that's what he did, because his other tweets flew in the face of the narrative that he was trying to create, so he didn't include them. So that was an epic fail. It didn't work. Anybody who's familiar with Felecia Killings, or even the rest of the non-establishment conservatives, know that what he's saying isn't true. So that was one of the reasons why I talked about this in this video, because I want other people to see that what he said wasn't accurate. I'll also be writing an article about it as well. I'm not done yet. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the chats here. Get some little sippy sip of my water. Let's see. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention. If you notice, he implied that Maj Touré, Shamika Michelle, Sonnie Johnson, and the rest of the people who were on that panel subscribe to critical race theory. He even said that Sonnie also does too, but there was something missing. And you can read the article, the link's in the show notes. There's one thing missing: evidence, receipts. He has no quotes from Sonnie Johnson saying that she supports critical race theory or any of the principles behind critical race theory. Same with all the others. So this is really shoddy work here. I mean, as a fellow journalist and commentator, he should know better, and he probably does know better. This was a really shoddy argument. Now, maybe some of the arguments he made in other areas of his article might have been valid, but what he was talking about with conscious conservatives is completely false.